Drum Major MacKinnon, over here. Clown Lemon, please, a bit over there.
Alas, it was to none but me, and all I've done for want of wit to memory I can't recall. So
going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. Private Richard Hay, 1st Battalion Gordon Highlanders, 6th May 1915, age 20. Private and Princess Patricia's Canadian, and Dr. T.R. Hay is from the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, Eastern Ontario Regiment, 30th October 1917, age 27.
Private John McLaren, Royal Berkshire Regiment, died 6th of November 17, age 21. Token Farm Cemetery No. 1. Lance Corporal Edward McLaren, King's Regiment Liverpool, died 8th of September 17, age 26.
Guns, camels, 3 extensions or fellows. Major Paul, Gavin, 88, Corporal Fitzroy Donald McLean, 2nd Battalion, Canadian Infantry, died of wounds, 9th November 1917, age 23. Boot, Crater Cemetery, West Fernandron, Gunner Hector McLean, Gunner, 35th Battery, 22nd Brigade, Royal Field.
Ramsey Alexander, 16 Battalion on the Royal Field Artillery, killed in action 26 October 17, aged 21. The Private Ramsey John Stephen from the Highland Light Infantry, killed in action on the 2 December 17, aged 29.
Ankle Memorial, Private Ewan MacKinnon, Seafort Islanders, 6th September 1970. Ankle Memorial, 2nd Lieutenant John Angus MacKinnon, of the Royal Berkshire Regiment, 22 August 1917, age 22.
Gunner P. Lamond, Brandhook New Military Cemetery, 19th of August 1917, age 22. Bayeux Memorial, Trooper Hector J. Lamond, 25th of July 1944. Ranville War Cemetery, Private Archibald Lamond, 9th of July 1944, aged 25.
Dat is mooi. Allez hop. Mais pourquoi tu me filmes? Oh non, non. On y va. Il accroche pas au bas, pas d'escalier.
Memorial for Alexander MacKinnon, who died and was buried here. We'll make a special homage to him, the name of the Clan MacKinnon.
So welcome everyone. It's as always a privilege to have so many Scottish clans represented here in Poperinge at the special homage for today. This year is Clan MacKinnon. So before I start on telling you the story of Charles, before we start on the story of Charles, who you are remembering today, I'd first like to tell you a wee bit about this site here, because it's so entwined with the history of Charles MacKinnon as well. So, and it also has some Scottish stories, which I'll try briefly to refer to. You all know, the paperwork in hospitals is endlessly. So it was the same 100 years ago. He wrote down the name of the patient and what was wrong with him, which leads, of course, to the fact that Charles today has a known grave. We know where Charles is buried. He is not missing, unlike the ones on the Menin Gate. So the regimental 8 post doesn't look like much. It is a hole in the ground. Poet John McCrae wrote his famous In Flanders Fields poem. That's why we lay poppy reeds today. And from there, by cart and horse, by motorized ambulance, if you're lucky, you are driven to the next place. Now in the case of Charles MacKinnon, we're not sure, because we know that Charles was actually had been wounded in his right forearm. Of doctors and nurses, all of them male, treating you. Okay, same thing happens again, and only in real emergencies, if your life was really threatened, they would, time permitting, resources permitting, staff permitting, operate on you. On average, like today in 1917, 120 bodies had to be buried on one day. Imagine, that's more than us here combined. Every year I research a soldier for Tom. Sometimes we're lucky enough to find lots of details, and sometimes, like today, I've not been as fortunate. The problem mainly is that a lot of the archives from the day were destroyed in World War II, as was the case with those of Charles MacKinnon. I have a little bit of information. So first of all, Charles MacKinnon was 19 years old when he died. 19 years old was the age where you actually were allowed to enlist for service abroad. So there's a very good chance that he joined up the previous year in 1916 as a volunteer still to come out and do his bit. His family lived in Essex in Westcliff-on-Sea. So Charles would join up. Most likely he would have lived in London. Again, we're not entirely sure of that. But he joined up in the Queen's Westminster Rifles, a London unit. Now the Queen's Westminster Rifles have a very big link with this town here as well. Some of you might have heard of the Talbot House Club, Homage, here in the town centre of Popperinge, run as a soldier's home from home basically, with a beautiful chapel on top. The chapel was put together by the Queen's Westminster Rifles. So I'm sure, well, we can have a... I'm positive that Charles would have been one of the many, well, of the 500,000 visitors who would have frequented the club. So Charles most likely would have served very briefly only in the army. He came up here in these areas as part of the 5th British Army during the Passchendaele offensive under the command of General Gough. Now, the objective of the Passchendaele offensive was very simple in a way. It was to break through the German lines and race through the sea to take the cities of Ostende, Zeebrugge, Bruges, to get rid of the German submarines who were sinking the British convoys coming out of Canada and the States with supplies. So General Gough, a very flamboyant general from Northern Ireland, but perhaps not the best planner, if you allow me to say so. So the first battles he orchestrated weren't a very great success and during the Passchendaele campaign. So nonetheless, they kept giving him the, well, a second chance, a third chance, and his third chance came on the 16th of August 1917. The objective again was very simple, to break through the German lines, and at one place it worked. They were able to advance a kilometre or two, which is next to nothing, at Langemark. Hence, on the 16th of August, we know the battle as the Battle of Langemark. That day, 2 Scottish divisions were thrown in the battle as well, and you can say a lot about the battle, but certainly not that they didn't fight bravely. An awful lot of them are still there in the fields surrounding the Scottish Memorial at Friesenberg. Charles was a little bit further off, not fighting in a Scottish division, a London division though. Not a kilted soldier in his case, but he had the Scottish link. His objective lay between Stirling Castle and Blackwatch Corner, 2 Scottish place names. They didn't know or didn't bother too much pronouncing the local place names, so he had at least a Scottish home to run towards that day. Sadly, that day Charles was most likely hit by a bullet in his right forearm and evacuated out. Along the proceedings I've explained, the average evacuation took between 24 and 48 hours. In Charles's case, it took most likely 3 full days. And I don't know, but I'm just assuming, I'm not medically schooled at all, but that a loss of blood over 3 days and an infection of the wound without any antibiotics present might have led to his death here at least on the 19th of August 1917, 3 days after the battle. So imagine the pain he must have been in, no doubt. They were able to give him morphine, which I'm sure he received, but only small dosages because he could not operate as a doctor. Blood transfusions were in progress here at the time, so you never know that the Canadian doctor Crile tried experimenting on him, but very few of the experiments at the time were successful. So he was buried here in, well, basically a ditch. It would have been a long row, because if you look at the dates on his headstone, 18th, 19th, they're all buried the same week, these guys. And Walter Sutherland and his team had to move quite quickly to bury the dead. Today he's resting amongst 10,784 other Commonwealth casualties, German casualties, Chinese casualties, French casualties, 30 nationalities. He This is the second largest Commonwealth cemetery we have in the area, and actually I'd like to finish by saying he's very unlucky in a way. He is one of only 3%. The casualty rate, the fatality rate at the cemetery is 3%. 97% of the people who arrived at the cemetery left again alive by train or on foot. 3% didn't make their treatment, didn't survive treatment. So Charles, you could say, is one of the unlucky 3% who is now resting here at Lyssentuk Military Cemetery. Thank you very much.